welcome to Let's Talk Diz, a show that gives you everything you need to know to help make your Disney vacation as magical as can be in just about 20 minutes. I'm your host, Jeff Coviello. With me each week is Disney Master Sandy from Easy Diz by Instant Impressions Travel Services. Sandy, how are you this week?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing well. This is one of the shows that my full-on nerd, my Disney nerd pops out. You know, every time I have anybody that I know that's traveling to Walt Disney World specifically, they always have a million questions, but I constantly get asked about transportation. And so tonight we're going to talk all about transportation facts and maybe give a couple of tips as to how to navigate using the complimentary transportation systems in Walt Disney World.
And you're right. It comes up so often because if you've never been to Disney, the scope and the size and the number of modes of transportation are a lot for people to comprehend.
Right.
And even bigger, I'm going to start because I'm a numbers girl. I'm going to throw out a number that is not the attendance number because not everybody that comes to Disney gets on any of the complimentary transportation.
Sure.
There are off-site guests that just drive right to Animal Kingdom or drive right to Epcot. We're not talking about our parking lot trams for this transportation. We're talking about truly getting from a point A to point B.
Right.
And currently Disney estimates that they have over 130 million people riding their transportation in a year.
That's bonkers.
I mean,
it's bonkers.
130 million people. I thought when I did my Run Disney event and, you know, we had our 12,000 people lining up, that was a lot of people. Picture the 130 million.
130 million dwarfs that. But it's legitimately, aside from the planes, it's legitimately planes, trains, automobiles, boats. You know, you're in the sky because you have the sky gondola system, but it's not quite a plane. So, like, when you think about it, there's so many different ways that they move people from location to location, right? You said point A to point B. So let's start off with buses. Right? Because buses are, for anybody that's been to Walt Disney World, you know that the bus fleet is massive. You know that it's constantly in motion. And you know that it's changed, over the course of time.
And the bus fleet was the original. I think, it's interesting if you make your own dining reservations or you call on the phone. One of the things that Disney will tell you, which is a little overwhelming to a lot of people, I'm going to be honest. They tell you to allow 90 minutes to get from point to point.
Right.
And sometimes people will say to me, what do you mean? I'm staying on property. Why do I need 90 minutes?
Wow.
There are many times that you don't.
Sure.
But I always say to people, when I do training with my team or I talk to clients who are a little leery, I always give this example. If you were to say to me right now, hey, grab your keys, jump in the car and run down the street and grab some milk. I ask people how long from when I grab my keys till when I'm in the car. And in my case, the answer is about 2 minutes. My car is in my driveway. It's 4 steps from the front door. I'm good. But when you're traveling in Disney, you really have to think about where you're traveling. And that traveling starts in your hotel room.
Correct.
And as some of you know, there are resorts like Disney's Boardwalk. Sorry, I got to call you guys out there. You are known for the longest hallways of any resort.
Yep.
It could take me 6 or 7 minutes to get down the hall and down the elevator and into the lobby to still have to walk another 3 minutes to the bus stop.
Correct.
So from my door to the bus stop can sometimes be 6 to 12 minutes.
Yep. Easy. Yeah.
My car is waiting in my driveway for me. Sadly, the bus or any other transportation is not always waiting for me.
Correct.
It runs about every 15 minutes, but I might have to wait that 15 minutes because I watched the tail lights as I was running to the bus stop.
Happens often.
And again, when I get in my car, because I don't have any babies to buckle into car seats anymore, I can get in my car, close the door, and be moving in a whole minute. Sadly, people don't board the bus that quickly and get moving that quickly.
No.
So when we talk about 90 minutes door to door, your bus ride might only be 12 or 15, but you've got to get from your room to the bus. The bus has to pull up. You've got to board the bus has to pull away. And then when it drops you off, you're still nowhere near where you want to be. You've got to walk to the front, get your way through security, then get through the no longer turnstiles and into the park. And when you're in the park, the only thing right inside the park gate is a gift shop. So when you're talking about going to dining or an early morning bippity-boppity boutique, yes, they've got this amazing transportation fleet that we're going to talk about, but it takes time to get where you're going.
Yes, but I think it's important before
you asked me a question and I just gave you a whole tangent.
Well,
so you want to try again?
Let me give you something else too before I ask the question again. Most of everything that we've got here, most every mode of transportation that you've got here is incredibly, ADA compliant, right? So depending upon your traveling party, if you have people that you're traveling with that are in wheelchairs, that are in scooters, that are on crutches, there's going to be opportunities in every one of these modes of transportation that we're talking about where the accommodations are made that it makes it feel just as seamless as if you were not traveling with one of those needs, right? So I think that that's important for us to lead with.
And I think you're right. It is about 98%. There are a couple of boats, and I know that there's talk of whether they will replace them, only over by the Magic Kingdom, and only that run from a resort to the Magic Kingdom, that you can't get a scooter onto because they have 3 steps getting into them. But there are other boats that come to that same boat dock and run that same route. So there'll never be some place where they say, you can't get from here to there.
Right. All right, so let's go back to the buses, right? The buses, as we said, they were the original transportation from point to point. How have they changed? And, one of my favorite things to talk about, we can just very briefly, the designs of the buses, how they've changed too.
The designs are amazing. They used to be very simplistic. I remember when I was younger, and even when I started in this industry, if you talk to somebody who was a bus driver, and they are among the proudest people about their role in Disney.
Yeah.
I love talking to bus drivers. I will say, don't take everything they say as gospel. They're the cause of a lot of these Disney rumors that you sometimes hear. But if you would find somebody who worked for Disney, and they might not have been at work, so you might ask them this question when they tell you that they're a cast member. If you ask them what they did, they used to reply and tell you that they were the wearer of the purple pants.
Right.
I will never forget that phrase because it went along with the Disney signage. And I will say it's one little piece of nostalgia that I'm kind of losing, but Disney had these yellow, red, and purple road signs everywhere. They're converting some of them to different colors. And the purple from the road signs went with the purple pants of the bus drivers. And they were very basic design. You had that purple stripe and you were good to go. Over the years, it evolved. Back in about 2000, they went to a white, black, and red design, and they upset the apple cart. Disney fans are loyal, and Disney fans don't do change.
It's amazing. And it's you to a T, to be fair.
It's me to a T, and people want to say, so what? Who cares what the outside of your bus looks like? Get on the bus.
No.
But when they made that change, and at the time, I said it kind of looked like all the packaging that Apple was coming out with. That's what it reminded me of.
Right.
And there was such an uproar that's when they said, you know what? This is really interesting how into the bus people are. And from that sprung character buses.
Right.
Buses that had just Mickey or just Minnie. And the bus could be designated by that key character. And it wasn't a big thing. If it was Minnie, it might have a pink stripe and Minnie's head and hands. That was it. It wasn't this big wrap. And people loved it. And the photos and websites designated all about those bus pictures. And then the Imagineers went deeper and said, wow, if they're this crazed that we put Mickey on it or Minnie or Pluto, let's go all out. And so it began with these wrapped buses that you and I have talked about. The amount of IP that Disney has is just amazing. So you can get everything from classic in the Cinderella bus, where you see the coach pulling the coach with the horses, to there's a bus for Coco and a bus for Toy Story and all of these different bus wraps. Listen, I say to people, don't stand there and wait for a specific design. You may never get where you're going. But I know plenty of people, especially at a park, that will go out midday when they're going to go back to the hotel midday, and they'll take a break for an hour right in that transportation loop just to watch all the different buses with their kids.
Well,
because they are true works of art.
Well, that you've got 424 buses, right? That are in transit during the given time there, which is really awesome. Depending upon where you are, the bus is the most reliable form of transportation. There are a couple of exceptions as far as if you're trying to get from point A to point B, but the bus, it's the OG, right? With the exception of what we're going to talk about next. So I'd like you to please stand clear of the doors as we talk about the monorail system, which is so iconic that anybody that has ever been to Walt Disney World, one of the things, and I'm sure they say this to you all the time, I need to be on that monorail line, right? Like, it's so sought after for various different reasons because it's so unique. It's an attraction in and of itself. You talked about wrapping the buses. They've wrapped certain monorails as well over time.
They have, and if they're not on the monorail line, it is not uncommon for people just to go take a monorail ride.
Right.
Maybe your first day, you don't have park admission because you're getting in late in the day. You pick a spot to go to dinner just so that you can ride the monorail loop. It's not taking you anywhere but in a big circle.
No.
But you want to ride the monorail.
Well, and people have done bar crawls based off of the monorail loop too. That's one of the things that pops up too. So there's a lot of different ways to handle that.
And actually, not only did people do bar crawls, but years ago, there used to be something that I participated in that Disney had a tour called Highway in the Sky.
Yep.
And it was not quite a bar crawl, but pretty close. It was cocktails in every resort. They had special locations set up for us. And we started and ended in the Contemporary. We took the monorail to get everywhere we were going. And we ended back at the Contemporary with a private fireworks view.
But it's iconic, right? The monorail is
and
iconic.
I would be remiss if we talked about monorails and we didn't give a huge shout out to Bob Gurr.
Yeah.
The
of course.
Incredible Imagineer who, along with Walt, worked to bring monorails to America, to Disneyland. And the original monorail actually began out in Disneyland. Mm-hmm. And so we brought it here. The monorails on the East Coast are larger than the ones on the West Coast. We need to move a lot more people here. And for the most part, our monorails are pretty simple. You'll hear monorail red, monorail pink. They're just a thin stripe. But as you said, every once in a while, you'll look up on that track and they will opt to have wrapped one or two of the monorails in that fleet of 12.
And it's stuck to that loop that you mentioned, but then it also goes off to Transportation Ticket Center and Epcot. So like there are a number of different rides you can take. If you're somebody that's just trying to go along for the ride, there's a way for you to just enjoy that.
And I'll let you in on a little backstage secret. I like to take a little ride at night and see the monorails tucked in for the night. There is another path that the monorails take, and they come off the track at night and go into the monorail house, which has monorails at the top and the trains from the Magic Kingdom at the bottom. So you can see them sleeping at night.
Very fun. Very fun. So the next thing is free-floating vessels, right? So much water in Walt Disney World, and in pretty much every body of water that they have, there are boats that are captained by, pilots essentially on the open waterway that are
Correct.
trying to get
Because
people
as you said, they
from
are
here and there.
free-floating vessels. There is no track. They will tell
No.
you that you need to be seated because it's not on a track.
Yeah.
It's also one of the reasons that occasionally, especially in those Magic Kingdom resort areas, when you have a scooter, you might get to a resort and they will say, can we ask everybody to please stand up and fill in the blank, move all the way to the left side of the boat, because the water level changes. They are not on a track. There is no, raised dock that they pull into. And sometimes they have to shift the weight in the boat to be able to line up the exit for somebody in a scooter that can't take a step.
Yeah.
So, yes, they are free-floating vessels. The most popular and the original is in the Magic Kingdom area from the Transportation Center over to the Polynesian, the Wilderness Lodge, Fort Wilderness, Contemporary, and, of course, the Grand Floridian. We also find them in the Epcot and Hollywood Studios area. So there is a boat that runs from Epcot to Hollywood Studios with stops at the Boardwalk, the Beach and Yacht Club, and the Swan and Dolphin. These waterways do not connect to each other. There is no way to get from one to the other.
No.
And then the third waterway that is often overlooked, but it is my parents' favorite way to spend a day.
It's mine too.
Is in Disney Springs. You can take a boat to Port Orleans Riverside, French Quarter, Old Key West, and Saratoga Springs.
It's a cool little path there too. And you can even, I know we jump into this part of my life too. There's a nice little path that you could walk too. You could walk or you can jog along the water and see where the boats are so that if you wanted to jump on the boats later, you know exactly where they're going. Very, very cool. I've always been fascinated by the boats at Walt Disney World. I think it's a really, really fun and unique feature that you just don't get everywhere.
It is, and I will say one of my favorite boat rides, and it is difficult to time it this way, but every once in a while, I'll be headed over to the Magic Kingdom for like an after hours night, and I'm coming from Wilderness Lodge, and I try to get on the boat a minute or two before or after the start of the fireworks.
Yeah,
and so
cool.
I get my own nice viewing from the front of that boat.
Yeah, it's
right
awesome.
Over to Magic Kingdom.
It's
without paying for a private fireworks hunt.
It's awesome. We hit that at our last trip. Actually, it was really, really cool. One of the newest mode of transportation that we've got over there are the sky gondolas, and I know that this is becoming or has become very quickly one of your favorites. It's such an incredible addition to the entire property.
Let's be honest. It went from my least favorite because I don't do heights very well.
Right.
And it makes a little bit of noise and it shakes in the sky, but now I've gotten used to it and it is incredibly efficient.
It is.
It opened to the public September 29th, 2019. And again, Disney, people talk often about the cost of Disney and the expense of Disney, but one of the things that I have to compliment them on is, I'm not going to say, and I'll readily disclose, I have been a shareholder now for 30 some odd years. I collect my little dividend check and I will never sell that stock. They obviously, they have to satisfy a board of directors and shareholders, but they are constantly putting money back into the parks. How do we bring them new things? How do we improve things? How do we take away wait times and slow times and pain points? And the gondola system did that. I hope that one day they figure out a way to expand it. The true magic for anyone listening, if you figure out how to expand it into Disney Springs, because leaving Disney Springs at night,
it's hard,
is a parking lot.
Yeah.
And because of the size of the resorts, the gondola is really about Art of Animation, Pop Century, and Caribbean Beach. Yes, Riviera is on there. Yes, technically Boardwalk Beach Club, Yacht Club are on there. But you've got those, Yacht Club can walk into Epcot or take the boat. They can
Right.
take the boat into Hollywood Studios. You've got those 3 really large resorts that needed bus after bus after bus to satisfy the number of people going to those 2 parks. So it took the pain point off the bus. It took some traffic out of the area so that buses that were still running to Animal Kingdom and Magic Kingdom had an easier flow. And it made it so much quicker for people from those 3 resorts to get into Epcot and Hollywood Studios.
It also changed the volume at the entrance to these parks too, right? Because it's more of just a consistent guest arrival than it is just the buses are dumping. You know what I mean? So it's definitely changed. It's changed everything over there.
It has, and similar to the buses, check out all the gondola designs.
Yep.
They are quick to update some of the wraps with the most current movies. Lots of great fun.
It's one of my kids' favorite games. Is they
stand around a little bit longer there if you're really set on riding something specific. They won't necessarily let you do that, first thing in the morning or at park closing. But if you're there doing a quieter day and you're willing to wait 20 minutes to get on, the perfect Star Wars one for your family or the princesses, you can definitely do that there. Because of the way that the gondolas cycle, eventually it's got to show up. Unlike the buses, don't have to.
Well, I was going to say it's one of my kids' favorite games. Is they sit next to each other, facing the direction that the gondola is coming at them. So they get to whoever can name whatever the one that's approaching them first is the winner. So they just over and over.
And if you don't know this, they're not the same on the front and the back. They're the same theme,
correct,
but different characters.
Yeah, so it's a nice way to kill some time. You got an honorable mention here that I know you wanted to talk about real quick before we say goodbye.
So everything that we talked about is a complimentary, aka free mode of transportation, and moves a lot of people. The honorable mention is not free and it doesn't move a lot of people, but we would be remiss if we didn't mention the minivans. Mm-hmm. Minivans are basically a cab, a Lyft, an Uber, whatever you want to call it, that you do reserve through the Lyft app, but they are Disney cars and Disney cast. So you have a little bit more on the background check of the driver, on the cleaning of the car seat. They all come with 2 car seats, which is very hard to get in an Uber or a Lyft. So price tag wise, definitely more. But if you need it, a great way to get around, especially to the Magic Kingdom. Any of the other parks you can drive to, or you can be dropped off with an Uber and a Lyft. With the Magic Kingdom, you cannot drive there. You would drive to the Transportation and Ticket Center and then need a second mode of transportation. But the minivans can take you right to the door just like the buses do.
Okay, so we're coming to the end. Any last tips you want to give about just getting around Walt Disney World using the transportation system?
6 years ago, if we were doing this show, I would say to you, the number one thing that I need people to know is really, with the exception of the monorail loop, there is no resort-to-resort transportation. And now, between the monorail and the gondola, there's a lot of different opportunities. For instance, I had friends at Riviera, and they were trying to get back to the All-Stars, which there didn't used to be that transportation. You would have to hop on a bus, maybe go to a park, maybe go to Disney Springs. But now they were able to hop on the gondola, head over to Hollywood Studios, and then grab a bus there. Because the gondolas are constantly loading, it makes it a quick way to get around. Bus to bus can be time consuming. And so, yes, Disney, again, transports over 130 million riders annually. It can sometimes be a bit daunting in how to get around and how long it takes. We did an episode probably a little over a year ago where I was at Fort Wilderness trying to get back to my resort. And I ended up going to Disney Springs and switching buses there. And it was time consuming.
Yeah.
So, you can get around for free. It may not be the quickest. But often now there's more than one way to get around. So when in doubt, definitely ask. We're always happy to kind of give people the best way to go, but also sometimes it's just fun. Things like the monorail and the gondolas are outside of the park, so you can ride them without park admission just to enjoy. The gondolas really give you that unique view from the sky that you don't quite get it the same way from the monorail. So be brave and enjoy.
All right, Disney Master, before we close tonight, I'm going to give you one assignment.
Uh-oh.
All right. So you mentioned that your quest to get back from Fort Wilderness the other day. So I'm going to give you a hypothetical, and I'm going to ask you what you would take to get to this destination. All right?
All right, go for it.
You are at Disney's Hollywood Studios, and it is nearing dinner time, and you have a reservation for the Hoop-Dee-Doo Review at Fort Wilderness. What would you, Sandy, the Disney Master, take transportation-wise? No minivan, so the free transportation to get from Hollywood Studios to Pioneer Hall over in Fort Wilderness for your show?
So I will admit that sometimes I know the multiple routes in my head and I'm looking for multiple buses.
Yes, that's
fair. Because for those that don't know, Pioneer Hall is not in the front of Fort Wilderness.
Nope.
So the easiest is to get yourself over to the Magic Kingdom and take a boat across. Mm-hmm. But sometimes if the Fort Wilderness bus is on its way, which is also often the same as a Wilderness Lodge bus, sometimes it's the same, sometimes it's different.
Right.
Hopping on that bus can also work. If you do the Wilderness Lodge bus, then you can just be one stop away. So it is one of those not one size fits all, because there are multiple ways to get there.
I agree.
Sometimes, if you want to have fun, I always say to people, you decide, not necessarily, obviously, if you have reservations to go somewhere, you're not going to do it. But if you're having a resort day and you're trying to figure out what you're going to do, head out to the transportation and get on whatever bus comes first.
Yep.
Maybe it means that you end up over at Hollywood Studios, and so you're going to ride the boat or the gondola. Maybe it means you end up at Disney Springs. But again, kind of like you said, especially with the kids, sometimes it's like, all right, what do you think is coming? Some resorts do have that time board that'll give it away, but others don't. And again, you can spend some time just driving around, seeing other things. You are welcome to visit any resort. You just can't swim in any resort, only your own. So lots of ways to get around, lots of fun to be had with transportation.
Well, I appreciate you for indulging me. Transportation is a huge ball of questions that I receive constantly. I'm sure it's one of the things you and your team over there at Easy Diz deals with all the time. So thanks for taking the time tonight to talk about it, and I look forward to talking to you next week.
Sounds great.
And that's a wrap this week on Let's Talk Diz. If anyone you know could benefit from this or any show, please share, have them like, and subscribe. And don't forget to reach out to the folks at Easy Diz by Instant Impressions Travel Services for any Disney destination planning. Make it a great week, and as always, keep making memories.